one of the most consequential outcomes for the 2020 election that we've seen for Republicans and Trump supporters is that we've seen, I think, the potential for a future blueprint for sort of Republican conquest or victory in the Electoral College. And we saw that even though that Trump lost, that he built a coalition that very nearly won, even with a coronavirus pandemic happening, even with all these problems that Trump was facing, that where he should have lost big, he was still able to keep it close and very nearly win this election. And I think it's really important to look at the strategy that was really used here and what he was really able to do to make this election so close. And I feel like in a way, the strategy that he really put together in some ways, in many ways, is more effective than the 2016 strategy. It definitely would need to be honed a little bit, but I think really the most important takeaways that we saw with Trump's campaign in 2020 is that, one, he did not lose all of his support with blue-collar working class whites. He was still able to be extremely competitive in the upper Midwest, in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, in a way that people did not expect. He did not lose that base of support. He didn't win enough to actually win those states and win the election, but he still kept those states within razor-thin margins in a way that no Republican has since really 1988. And he's been the only Republican to do that. And conversely, at the exact same time, we saw that he made tremendous gains with Latino and Hispanic Americans, well above his 2016 numbers in the states of Florida, Texas, probably Arizona. I haven't looked at the numbers there. But really across the Southwest and Florida, he made tremendous gains among Hispanics. And really, these two things together could really be the potential for a true sort of conservative revival in the Electoral College and the electoral process in general. So if you saw a candidate that really competed well with Hispanics and was also able to win the working class blue-collar vote, you could see a Republican candidacy that could win the states of Florida, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, as well as Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. That would be a map that'd be well over 300 electoral votes. It'd be right around 325 electoral votes. And it would keep Republicans in power for a very long period of time. And really the ideas that are necessary to build that kind of coalition are really a mix between Trump's 2016 and his 2020 run. So you could borrow from both. So really what we saw in 2016 is he built this whole populist economic nationalist method. He talked about trade. He talked about China. He talked about bringing jobs home. He talked about nationalism. He talked about immigration. These things played very, very well in the upper Midwest, and he was able to win those blue-collar working class voters that have never really voted for Republicans, have always voted Democrat. And really that's what propelled him to that victory in 2016. But at the same time in 2016, he really turned off the Hispanic voters because his talks about, he talked a lot about the wall, and a lot of his rhetoric towards Hispanics was viewed in the media as being racist. And a lot of people in the Hispanic community took it as racist. But what we've seen in 2020 is that a lot of that sort of rhetoric has kind of calmed down a little bit. And as Hispanic Americans have seen him in power, they've started to realize that, hey, this man is really not as big of a racist as we've been led to believe. He didn't wipe us out. He isn't going around killing Hispanics. This is a guy who's really trying to protect the border. He's trying to maintain border security, but he is not Hitler. He is not a Nazi. And at the same time, we've seen that he is playing directly to certain things that the Hispanic community and the Latino community, I think, have felt very threatened of. And that is he's defending traditional family values. He's standing up against things like socialism and liberalism. He's standing for capitalism. And lastly, he's standing up for a traditional ideal of masculinity. And things like machismo are very important in the Latino community. And what we've really seen with that is that there's a certain brand of Latino voter, sort of like a Cuban American, or these sort of, more conservative Latinos that feel very threatened by our modern liberal culture they're looking at Trump and saying, you know what, I actually kind of like this guy. I like the fact that he has a little bit of machismo. He stands up for, traditional values. And I think that if you could capture that, and you could have, you could still win the white working class vote with the trade policies, and then you would also play to this Hispanic community. And, you could limit legal immigration as well. But you play to the Hispanics that are here, and you try to win the conservative portion of Hispanics that don't want socialism, that don't want Venezuela, that want traditional masculinity, that want traditional family values, that believe in the Catholic Church, that believe in Christianity. That if you win this group of Hispanics, and you also win this working class base of white voters in the upper Midwest, again, that's a route to GOP conquest of the Electoral College. If those two things could be mastered, the GOP could win elections for decades coming forward. And really, so there's no reason to move away from sort of Trumpism. Trumpism just needs to be sort of modified. It needs to be refined to the point where it can appeal both to the minority and the majority. You play to both of these groups, and you got yourself a blueprint for maintaining a strong, nationally interested United States of America with a strong conservative leadership.